This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
An entity is present through repetitive dreams, bodily detachment, dark entities, and sleep paralysis that cause chilling events. Hi friends, welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of the Unexplained podcast. In today's episode, I'm gonna tell several stories. Let's start with the first story that a colleague told me during one of the days we were eating together. We're gonna call him Pedro. He tells me that since he was a child, he has experienced paranormal situations. He says that for a long time, around the age of 8 or 9 years old, he was experiencing the sleep paralysis. I think most of you are familiar with this term, or at least you have heard it. For those who don't know, this is when you're in bed sleeping and you wake up with a strange sensation like a presence or something immobilizes you by positioning yourself on your chest and you can't move or speak. Your eyes only observe that which terrifies you, and that goes from a simple shadow to the most horrifying being or entity that can exist. Pedro used to experience it very often. And what he tells me is that he saw many terrible things. He says that on one occasion, while he was in his bedroom, he woke up in the middle of the night and noticed that there was something in his bedroom, a kind of shadow. He tries not to pay attention to it and tries to continue sleeping. As the atmosphere felt tense and he couldn't sleep, he notices that in the mirror there was the reflection of white eyes. He, in his mind, repeated to himself that he didn't want to turn around, that he didn't want to let that entity or that being know that he was aware of his presence. He says he closed his eyes and began to pray. He prayed the Lord's Prayer, but he says that it was useless, that this thing was stalking him and that he saw how the shadow was approaching him. He tells me that he was terrified. He asked God to help him because he feels the threat of that thing, of that entity that tormented him. He says that he closed his eyes while he was asking God mercy, as he felt helpless that he couldn't move. And he says that when he opened his eyes, he had such a terrifying entity right there in front of his face, staring at him. He says he was in complete shock. He couldn't move and wanted to scream, but he just couldn't. He tells me that he doesn't know how long he was like this, that maybe it was minutes or seconds, but for him it was as if it had been long hours of anguish and terror. When he finally breaks free from that terrifying experience, he says he had a rosary that was blessed. It had been a gift from her grandmother that helped him a little, although he didn't stop experiencing paranormal situations. He tells me that in the courtyard of his house, one day he noticed that in a corner there was a part where you could see that there was a lump on the floor, as if something was underneath. Well, the unevenness in the floor was very noticeable. He says that he decided to dig and dig to try to find or to look for some explanation for all those strange situations that he used to experience at home. He was almost certain that he would find something, and the reason that made him think this is that he had a recurring dream. He says that he dreamed a woman, and it was not only those dreams. He says that he always saw a shadow, a human figure that for a long time was present. Years went by and he saw that shadow very often, especially in the hallway of that house. He gets used to this situation, even though it was not normal, and he was afraid. He tried not to pay attention and went to his bedroom immediately and tried not to think anymore. Well, he thought that the shadow he used to see for many years was the same woman he continuously dreamed. When he finally managed to dig in the yard, he found nothing. However, the dreams that he continued to have, somehow he felt that were related. Something was in that house. Something was telling him that something had to be found or solved. One day, Pedro asked his mother if he could sleep in her bedroom. When his mother asked him what the reason is, he explains that he is afraid, and he tells her what he had been experiencing. His mother didn't believe him. She told him that he probably had a nightmare. Pedro tried to explain to her that it hadn't been a single event, but that he had seen that shadow many times and that it paralyzed him with fear to the point of not being able to move. That's how time passed. Pedro had to learn to live with that dreadful experience. He says that the blessed rosary given by his grandmother helped him to reduce the frequency of these episodes, of the shadow and of that recurring dream. However, the presence of that shadow continued in the house for many more years. One day, Pedro talked to his girlfriend since she told him that there was something in the house, something that sent chills down her spine, that she didn't really know what it was, but she felt that there was something strange. Pedro never wanted to say anything to her so that she wouldn't feel afraid. In fact, as his girlfriend had told him on several occasions that she didn't feel safe being alone in the house, that she was very afraid. One day, she asked Pedro that she wanted the dog to keep her company because Pedro had to travel for work and she was going to be alone for 2 or 3 days. Although Pedro didn't like that the dog was in bed, he agreed so that she could stay calm, without thinking that anything bad would happen. Well, it turns out that on the first day at night, Pedro says that already being asleep at about 2 or 3 in the morning, his girlfriend calls him on the phone in total panic. Pedro was very scared, thinking that something bad had happened to her or someone in the family. He says that she screamed and cried and told him to go back immediately, that she was very afraid and that she didn't know what to do, because she said that the dog was like crazy in the hallway, staring at a single point that didn't move and didn't stop barking. After this situation, Pedro decides to talk to that woman and ask her what she needed. He is determined to find out, as he was tired of the situation, as he claimed that the shadow and the dream meant something. Then he says that the woman, without saying a word, says to him, "My house." Pedro feels that she's worried about that house. Probably that woman had lived there at one time, but Pedro had no idea about it. He had lived there with his mother for a long time. So he says to her in his dream, "Your house. Don't worry about your house. We are going to take good care of it." From that dream, he never saw that shadow again, nor he did dream of that woman again. Well, after that dream, things in the house normalized, and Pedro's girlfriend confirmed that she no longer felt that anguish or strange thing that used to make her very afraid. Time passed, and one day, Pedro was talking with his mother. The subject of the shadow came up, and it turns out that she also got to see it, not when Pedro was a child, but a long time later. And although he had told her at the time his mother hadn't believed him, and then when she saw that shadow, she didn't want to say anything to anyone so as not to frighten them. Then Pedro knew that not only him nor his mother saw that shadow, but someone else in the family. One day while visiting, somebody claims to have seen someone. He says he saw a shadow of a woman walking down the hallway heading to one of the bedrooms. Nowadays, Pedro tries not to get too involved in these issues because strange things start to happen to him. He says that although he has stopped seeing that shadow, he is very easily attracted or too sensitive to these things. He says that after so many years of experiencing them, he is convinced that they, whether they are called entities, spirits, or whatever you want to call them, know that he has that ability to perceive, and that is why they are present. Friends, I remind you that all these stories are 100% real. People very close to me have told me about them, such as family, friends, acquaintances. If you want to share your story, you can to the email of the podcast, that is enigma@unexplainedpodcast.net. The following story was told to me by one of my son's friends. We'll call him Ivan. Ivan tells me several stories, but I'm going to tell you the ones that caught my attention the most. Ivan says that one day, like any other, he was in his bedroom. He was asleep. And that particular day was very cold. He says that in winter, he usually sleeps with socks because that's where he feels the cold. And that not only that, but when he covers himself with a blanket, he folds it down his feet so that if he stretches or moves them, they are always covered. Well, one particular day while he was sleeping, he says that he clearly felt something or someone open the palm of his hand, put something in it and close it. He says he immediately jumped out of bed. He woke up very scared because he says that the first thing that came to his mind was an animal, a mouse to be exact, because he felt something soft in the palm of his hand. He says that he turned on the light and that he searched everything in his room. He realized that it wasn't what he had thought, but that the furry thing he felt in the palm of his hand was nothing more than one of his socks he was wearing when he went to sleep. This seemed very strange to him because he didn't explain how it came to his hand and that he didn't even feel that they pulled his blankets, much less remove the sock from his foot. On other occasion, he is also asleep in his bedroom. He wakes up for some reason and begins to feel the atmosphere a little tense. He says that he clearly felt that someone approached his bed and he, being asleep on his side, didn't want to turn around, but he felt that someone was breathing in his ear. He says that he immediately got up very scared and turned on the light. There was no one there. However, he could no longer sleep thinking about what could have been. He says that there is something strange in that bedroom. He says that in his entire house, it is the only room that is always cold and that the drastic change in temperature compared to the rest of his house is very noticeable. He said that his father gave him a coin of Saint Benedict that he carries everywhere, that he feels protected. He says he feels that this comforts him. However, he says that his dog barks at the closet in his bedroom, and it is very noticeable, since I personally was able to see that video. On that video, the puppy is shown standing in front of the closet barking for several minutes, looking directly without taking attention away from the closet. And there is no human power that will silence him, much less withdraw from there. My son's friend told me that he always tries to make sense of things. Then he started taking clothes out of the closet. because he says he thought maybe there was an insect, a spider, which was the reason why the dog barked non-stop. You can clearly see in the video where he starts to take all the clothes out of the closet and tries to find the reason why the dog won't stop barking. He doesn't move or stop staring at the closet, a sign that he sees or feels that there is something. Ivan also told me that some time ago in that same house, he was doing a project for the school and that his mom took several photographs showing what he had done for the presentation. And he says that you can clearly see in one of the photographs that a white ball was floating in the air. He was a typical orb we all know. Obviously, they didn't see anything at the time. This came out in the photographs taken days later. He also tells me that he has always had trouble sleeping, and he says that one day he decided to put a video on YouTube to relax. He says that he had seen how people had been able to cope, or let's say cope with the problem of insomnia, and that he decided to put on the video to try to sleep. Well, he says that while he was lying in his bed, he started listening to the video, and he says that in a matter of minutes, his body begins to feel very relaxed, very comfortable, until he, in a blink of an eye, started to feel a strange sensation. When he opens his eyes, he sees himself lying on the bed. That is, it detached from his body, and he says that he was perplexed, because the sensation of seeing himself lying down while it floated above his bed, it left him speechless, and with panic that says that the first thing he thought was that he was dreaming. He tries to calm down and manages to see how his soul is getting closer to his own body, trying to find an explanation. When he suddenly wakes up and finally realizes what had happened, he says he was so scared that he never tried to sleep with those techniques again. My son tells me that he has stayed several times to sleep at his friend's house, and that he has been able to see on several occasions how the dog is barking and staring at the same place. It's clear that he notices the presence of something or someone in that house, and specifically in the closet. If you liked the episode, please share it with someone you know loves paranormal or unexplained stories. Follow me on different podcast platforms to receive notifications whenever a new episode comes out. Follow me on social media where I share previews of new episodes before they are published. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as unexplained.enigma. Facebook, Chronicles of the Unexplained. Thanks for listening, and see you all in the next unexplained story.